do that as a background? That'd be too much work.
I didn't know it actually started recording once you turned the webinar on.
Recording live now.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, yeah. So you were born in Charlotte, but moved to New Orleans and then came back to Charlotte like a month ago.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I went graduated from UNC Charlotte, and then the Saints offered me a job. So the NFL calls, it's like getting drafted. I was like, oh, D1 player going straight to college, going straight to the pros. Got to
Yeah.
get out there. Never been to New Orleans. I heard a lot of bad things about it, actually. And I was like, my parents were like, are you sure you want to go down there? And I was like, it's the NFL, Mom, Dad, I got to go. And so I went down there. But it was a blast. It grew on me. At first, I was like, dude, this city is disgusting compared to Charlotte, right? Charlotte's so new, so clean, so like straight edge.
Yeah.
Swamps, old buildings, but then it grows on you because the culture there, the people there just love that city. Food out of this world. Kind of like Charleston, honestly. You get the best of both worlds. The clean, high-end features of what New Orleans we like, and then also the nice, like very small town version of Charleston, which is like boutique architecture, all that.
And the food here is unreal too.
What's your favorite type of food down there? Like seafood, I'm guessing.
I'm not a big seafood guy. No, I like barbecue.
Okay.
And on Saturday, I smoked a Boston butt all day.
Oh,
And I fed all my neighbors. They all came over and we ate a bunch of barbecue together. Like, man, this is the best. I'm like,
that's awesome. So you have your own smoker?
yeah, I got an acorn, like a big green egg, but it's an acorn.
Okay.
And it takes me about 2 hours to really regulate the temperature, but it just stayed at even 250 for like 6 hours. It was great.
That's wild. I gotta come down there and try that out. Do you have do you go boating a lot out there? A lot of my friends live in Charleston. They'll like go boating there all the time.
Well, since I don't have a boat and I've got young kids, it's hard for me to get out. But back then, like I have a bunch of friends who have boats. I don't need one, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've heard boats but another 1,000 every time. Everybody's bringing another 1,000 to fix it or whatever they're doing. So
You gotta winterize it. You gotta dry dock it, or you gotta put it somewhere. It's a lot of work.
yeah, that's what my friend's dad told me. He's like, I bought this boat, and every time it's like it's but another 1,000. That's what boat stands for. Every time I fix the engine, I gotta get an oil change, I gotta get it winterized. He's like, it's just a lot.
I love it. We had someone attend real quick. We're gonna probably start in about 2 more minutes. So if you're watching the webinar recording of this, just skip through to like minute 5 and then we'll get started.
Yeah, or you can hear our banter.
Our banter is nice too. We should like start a podcast,
There's a lot of good ones. We'll talk about it off this, but yeah, there's a lot of good ones that I've listened to.
My favorite one is the Portfolio Pulse podcast.
Okay, I gotta look at that. I've been
Money
listening
podcast for medical professionals and entrepreneurs. Is by this host named Stephen Huskey. He's pretty cool.
I love that podcast. Actually, I'm a big follower. I listen to it all the time.
Lots of education on there.
Yeah. So do you do it out of your office, that podcast, or do you do it from home?
I do it right here, man. I got this microphone. I do it through Zoom. It's just easy. I can, talk to people all over the nation and learn new stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really use it to, share exactly what I do with the world because I want to highlight more businesses and give out education and all that.
Right. Why not?
Yeah.
Education's key.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna put some stuff up in your office though, right?
I am. Yeah, I should. He walks by like Neal. It looks like a prison in your office. He's got white walls. I'm like, I know. I need to get some stuff, guys. Give me some seconds to settle.
You got your cot behind you. You got some toilet wine brewing in the toilet over there.
Exactly. Oh man, no, I should get some stuff. I'll get my. I don't know. You got some certificates up. Should I get my diploma up from Charlotte?
Yeah. You're a 49er. Put a Saints helmet in here. I don't know how well that would go over in Charlotte, but you could try.
I got a New Orleans Pelicans. It's like from Brandon Ingram. It's like a city edition jersey, but an artist painted it. Put that in here. That'd be pretty cool.
Right on, man. Well, it's about 2 past the hour. I think we could go ahead and get started. People will start trickling in. Sure. Thank you for all the attendees we have that are here with us today. If you have any questions at all throughout the entire broadcast, you're welcome to use the chat function. While I'm presenting, Neal's going to check it out and vice versa. So we'll be able to answer your questions. Today's conversation is around protecting your greatest asset. Are you protecting it the right way? Do you understand how to best protect it? We're going to answer some questions like, do I really need disability insurance? Or what's the difference between short-term and long-term disability? Because I think those get confused a lot. You see Aflac commercials on TV, but you don't see a lot of long-term disability commercials on TV. So people have no idea all the options that are available to them. So I'm going to get started. My name's Stephen Huskey. I am the founder and owner of Huskey Financial Group, LLC, and we help medical professionals and entrepreneurs protect, grow, and eventually use their wealth to create income or exit their businesses when they're ready to. A lot of that has to do with not only using investment and wealth building strategies, but the other half of financial planning is protecting those assets as best as possible, because we never know what life's going to throw at us. The only constant in life is change. And so we need to make sure that we are avoiding all those obstacles that could push us off our pedestal and make it so that our goals are not able to be accomplished. We want to accomplish all those goals. So let's talk about, first and foremost, what it is we're actually protecting. Let's create some context around that. I'm going to share my screen real quick and make sure I've got up what I need. I've got a sample client listed here, so there's no real issues with security. All right. So this is a tool that we use called Living Balance Sheet. It's a way to help our clients have a more holistic and consultative approach to their financial planning. But the most important piece of all of this is if you look at this like a house, housing right now to build a spec house or, your own house is very expensive. Lumber costs are up 50%, but we're not going to get into that today. Let's talk about how you build a house. You initially start with the foundation of your home. And so since our foundation of our balance sheet as individuals, families, or business owners is your cash flow, it's extremely important to know how valuable that is and what it affords us to do. First thing it affords us to do is to basically have lifestyle, right? So it allows us to, eat and have a roof over our heads and pay for the things that we need. It also allows us to grow our assets. We can't save or invest or, look towards the future unless we have those assets building that wealth. It also allows us to pay down debts that we've leveraged for the education that we have, for the job that we've got, for the house that we're sleeping inside of. Like all those things, debt is not a bad tool if you're using it correctly, but cash flow is what ends up helping you pay that. So if we don't have the right roof over our household, we are exposed to elements, we're exposed to risk, we're exposed to critters that could get in and erode that cash flow. So the best thing you can do is understand that if all these savings are going to be accrued and all these accomplishments are going to be achieved, we have to make sure that nothing is going to erode our ability to be able to do that. So what's the right level of protection look like? There's 3 black swans that could happen in anyone's life. Bad things do happen to good people, unfortunately. One of those black swans is a lawsuit. You're really susceptible to that if you're a business owner, whether you have rental properties or you have a manufacturing business, it doesn't matter. Lawsuit can happen. Also, if you get sick or injured along the way while you're trying to accumulate money, if you have an illness or an injury that keeps you out of work for an extended period of time, that really messes with your cash flow. And group policies only go so far. I'll talk about that in a minute. Having a right estate plan. It's not about just having control from the grave. It's about having the right powers of attorney in place, people to make decisions for you. So legal documents are extremely important. And then lastly is what happens if you have a premature death? Can your family still go on? How do they adjust? Are they still having replacement of income? Having the right life insurance makes a lot of sense. So we're going to talk about this bucket today. If you get sick or injured along the way, what happens? What I'd like to share with you is a quick analogy. Please excuse my 5th grade handwriting here, but I drew an ATM machine. All right. So people may have heard this example before, but if you had an ATM, an automated teller machine out in your backyard, you probably build a fence around it so your neighbors couldn't get their grubby hands on it. But secondly, if you had your salary, let's just say we have a 35-year-old and they are making $100,000 gross every year. And that spit that out divided by 12. Every month you got a 12th of your $100,000. Neal, if that was spitting out money for you, would you insure that?
100%. I would do everything I can, put it lock and key as much as I can, only access to myself to make sure it's protected.
Exactly. If lightning strikes on that ATM outside and it stops spitting out $100,000 and you didn't insure it, you are out that money. There's nothing you can do about it. Like you can't go out and go to get another magic money machine in your backyard. So that's one point. Think about your income like an ATM. Your ability to get up and go to work every morning is extremely important for you and your family, your lifestyle, and your goals and your dreams. Secondly, these are diamond earrings. All right. Terrible handwriting, I know. Right. So they got jewelry here. We got little Timmy's house. We also have car here, right? People don't think twice about protecting things that are important to them, these tangible items like a wedding band or your house or your car. Those are things that have value and you spent money on. They go and they purchase coverage to ensure that those things have full replacement value if they end up getting lost or damaged. But what they don't always consider, let me remove this box, is how important their cash flow is. So because of those other things are important to ensure, why wouldn't we properly protect our ability to grow that income? Right. So,
or even earn it, really, right? Don't even earn that income.
Or even earn it. Exactly. Yeah. I'm thinking about raises here, like getting a raise every 8 months. But if we don't have that income coming in, we can't even provide the coverage for those items. We can't even own those items anymore.
Right.
Last example I'll use with this whiteboard is talking about statistics and consequence. So first thing I want to draw, this is an umbrella, just so you guys know.
It's like one of those ghosts from Mario.
I think you're talking about Pac-Man.
Pac-Man, I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right. So let's say you're watching the news before you go out to work in the morning, and the weather guy gets up there and he states, hey, it's going to be a hot day today. There's going to be a 25% chance that it's going to rain. Other than that, you're looking at a beautiful day, sunny and no clouds in the sky. Since he said there's a 25% chance of rain, Neal, realistically, are you going to take that umbrella when you walk out the door to get in your car?
Probably not, but if I'm looking like this, I might. You know what I'm saying?
You're looking fresh, like you are dapper. Yeah, you may. Let me ask you this: what is the consequence of not grabbing that umbrella on your way out, and it actually ends up raining?
I'd get wet. I wouldn't be happy, but it'd be fine. I'd get over it.
Yeah, you got some raindrops. The worst thing that can happen if you don't grab that umbrella is you could get wet, right? So there's 25% chance of that. Let's talk about this too. This is supposed to be a gun, right? Let's say your friend comes up and says, hey, let's play some Russian roulette. I've got 4 chambers in my gun and I've popped 1 bullet into one of those chambers. There's a 25% chance of what happening, Neal?
Of death or getting injured, Yeah.
Well, if you're doing it right here, you're probably going to die, right? So there's 25% chance that you're going to die if you play this game. Are you going to play Russian roulette with him?
No chance. I'm not my friend anymore. Why would my friend even encourage that?
Yeah, exactly. So the statistics of 25% doesn't really resonate with people, but it's the consequence of not having that decision be the right one. 25% chance you may die. So think about this. There is a 1 in 4 chance. If there's 4 people watching this webinar, I think there's more than that, but if there's only 4 people watching this webinar, one of them will have a long-term disability before they reach retirement age of 65. So we'll let you kind of describe what constitutes a long-term disability, what are the most common causes of long-term disabilities, but think about that. That's a pretty powerful statement.
Sure. So going off of that, I mean, a long-term disability, most people kind of think, okay, like losing their arm, their leg, or breaking a bone. There's many different things that really say that a disability is defined as a disability. It could be a mental nervous situation. You could have depression, anxiety, anything that takes you away from working. There's people that are on claim right now with Guardian that had a mental nervous this situation that has now made them disabled from working because they can't. The pain of a depression or anxiety is too crippling for them to get to work. There's also the biggest factors that lead to death, cancer, any kind of heart disease, any kind of stroke, are all the same factors of disability as well. Any kind of stroke, heart attack, cancer are all covered by your disability insurance. So the top 3 causes of death for most people are also the same causes of disabilities in those people. And that's what people don't really realize. I know, as well as Stephen, we all know someone that's had a stroke at a young age, had a heart attack at a young age, that they didn't plan for that to happen. They were just a healthy person doing their normal thing, going to work out, going to work, and they had a stroke that really impacted their family, or had a heart attack that really impacted their family. And these are things that you can't plan for. Just like cancer, it was not ever on the calendar to say, oh, cancer is going to show up on the 15th of August, and I can't wait. It'll be great. No,
Yeah.
it's not planned for. You just go to a doctor one day and they diagnose you. So having disability insurance, make sure that your ATM is protected on your worst day. God forbid it should never
Yeah,
happen.
and it doesn't even have to be as serious as something like stroke or cancer. It could be something like I've lost sight in one eye. I need, I've lost the ability to work 100% of the time. I can only work 60% of the time now. So
During COVID, it was getting on a ventilator. I mean, if
yeah,
we Guardian said that if you can't do a daily activity of living, breathing is on your own is a daily activity of living. So Guardian said if you were on a ventilator, we're going to pay you. And so that was a huge thing. And Guardian did the right thing there when it happened.
great point, man. Case in point. So I want to use this example. I've discussed what it is we're actually protecting. This is going to provide some context. Let's say we have a 35-year-old individual who is got 30 years left to work. They want to retire at age 65, which is pretty common, and they are earning $100,000 a year. They have a pretty decent boss who gives them a cost of living wage increase every year. So that's why you see 4% on here. So if this person were to take every single paycheck that they earned and they went to the bank and they cashed that out and they went down to their house and they have a big vault and they stuck every penny inside of that vault, that particular individual has a realized wealth in that vault of $5.6 million. That's the amount of money that's going to flow through their fingertips before taxes and living expenses and debts and all that stuff takes money out of it. But that's the amount of wealth they're generating through their working years. So from this realized wealth, they need to be able to accomplish all of their goals, buy their house, have that dream wedding, pay for their kids' education, save for retirement. All these different things are going to come from that $5.6 million. So what does it look like if this individual, which is pretty common, has maybe a group long-term disability insurance policy at work? They've got short-term disability, which we'll get into the difference between those two. Let's just say that, 6 years into their tenure of working, they have 40% goes out the window because their group policy now only covers 60% of their wages. Let's say they get into a car accident and they lose the use of both of their legs, and the doctor has now deemed them permanently disabled. Okay, let's say they were a realtor and they can't show homes anymore. They completely can't work. Their long-term disability policy now will provide them with $3.36 million of the original 5.6. So they have already lost $2.3 million of their wage, just like that. So the thing I'll ask is like, all right, well, which one of these goals, like paying down student debt, taking their children to see their grandparents, starting to save for kids' education, which of these goals do we need to cross off because they're no longer able to be completed? Something to think about. Another thing is, let me ask you this question, Neal. Of these group policies, and typically your employer pays for these policies, who receives the tax benefit of the disability policy when the employer pays for it?
So the employer receives a tax benefit. You get that 60%, as you said, but then you're going to get taxed on 60%. So you're really not going to see that full 60%. You're going to get taxed on it, and it's going to be a lot less than you think.
Yeah, so the reason behind this is because the employer gets to write off or deduct the amount of premium cost on their tax return. So they're receiving the benefit. So that means that someone else is going to have to pay that, and it's going to be the beneficiary of that benefit. So let's just say they're in the 22 to 24% tax bracket. I'm going to make it an even 20% just to show here. So now you went from making 100% of your income down to 40% on day one. So that 5.6 million I showed you earlier, you now can only accumulate $2.2 million of wealth.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is to mention there, Stephen, is that the employer paid most of the time doesn't cover any kind of bonuses, any kind of commissions. It's off of your straight base salary. So if you got it's a lot of people that we work with, sometimes they make half base, half bonus, 150 base, 150 bonus. That 150 is completely unprotected, but they use that as part of their lifestyle to pay their bills and all that.
Yeah, they're not just like sitting around putting that commission check in the bank and just living off base salary. I mean, if they do that, fantastic, but that's not most Americans. Right. Another thing I forgot to mention, though, is there is no cost of living adjustment increase on a group disability policy. So that 4% goes away, and you're making the same dollar amount every year. And as we know, with inflation and the cost of goods and services getting more expensive, that means every single year you're earning this, you're getting poorer and poorer. So now your $5.6 million has been decreased all the way down to 1.2, and you still have to save for retirement because after age 65, those policies don't pay you a dime.
And the biggest thing is to also mention is most of these policies, like obviously everybody's unique, and that's why Stephen does what he does. He's going to sit down with you, really be strategic to see what you currently have in force and what you currently need. But looking at your paycheck and looking at the policy details, sometimes it's very modified ONOC or true ONOC, which are definitions of the contract, which is really important. I'll get into that later. But if it's a modified ONOC, if you were a high-end $300,000 income earning professional, but then you can even become a doorman at, let's just say, Walmart, then you can't collect benefit because you might be in a wheelchair and you could say, hey, hello, welcome to Walmart, but you're gainfully employed. You can't collect benefit for your $300,000 salary that's now gone. So if
that's right. That's why you hear people who are saying, I can't go get a job because if I do, my disability benefit's going to decrease by the new amount of the taxable income that I've been generating.
So
that's
it's very important to get a good definition too, which group policies typically don't because they are for the masses.
Correct. And then there's one last thing that I want to show the audience and the listeners before I turn it over to you, Neal, and I'll introduce you in just a second. I'm sorry I didn't do that in the beginning.
It's all good.
But there's something here that I want to show you. Like here's how this would look. All right. So let's say that we're starting from scratch. This person is about 45 or 50 years old. They're going to live to 95 or 100. Right. I'm being, probably a little bit too much there, but this is exactly what this looks like. All right. So we have an asset value of $200,000. We have debt of $350,000. That's mortgage and student loans and credit cards being paid off. We have two sources of income. We've got spouse A and spouse B. And then cost of living for this couple right here is $120,000. All right. So if we look at this, you can see that they're able to start saving and saving and saving, even with cost of living and debt and things they're paying off because they're generating the right amount of income. This is if in a perfect world, nothing happens. They retire at this age, at age 35, and then they start spending down their assets over time. Right. And they don't leave a legacy for their kids because their kids are on their own. So that's just in this example how it works. Let's just see what happens if we have spouse A, who's the main breadwinner here, have a 5-year disability 5 years into their savings plan. Here's how it looks. Pretty tough. Even 5 years of not earning an income, this couple's in the red. So how do they adjust? Can they still put away money?
I mean, going off that, that chart speaks volumes. I mean, disability is one of the leading causes of bankruptcy in American families because if one of your spouses gets disabled, you got a lot more bankruptcy cases coming from that.
That's exactly right. So even 5 years of not having your income and even living off some savings that you've got, it's going to be a huge detriment to your balance sheet. And you're going to have to really, really adjust. You're going to have to get rid of some goals. You're going to have to stop saving. And we can't do that. We can't afford to do that, especially in today's world. So I will stop sharing. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to turn it over to Neal. Neal Patel is our disability guru. He's the expert with all things disability. He's very familiar with the Guardian product. And the reason we talk about Guardian is because it is the #1 disability policy in America based on their definition of true own occupation. I'll let you get more into that. But Neal, thank you for joining us today, man.
Absolutely, Stephen. I appreciate you having me, and I'm looking forward to educating you and kind of giving you guys a high-level overview of what disability is. That way you can have a better understanding of what you currently have and how Stephen can help you maybe find the right solutions for you. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of go over a presentation, and it's really, really important to understand, your income makes your lifestyle possible, right? So having a nice house, having a boat, having a car, having food on the table, having your kids in private school, or whatever it may be that makes your lifestyle possible. Without your income, it wouldn't be. So protecting that is as important as protecting your house, protecting your car, because without a house or car insurance, if God forbid something happened, you'd be left out in the street. So your income, why not protect it? And so that the next thing is how would you pay your expenses? I mean, here's a quick list of things, your housing, your utilities, your phone. Really finding disability insurance is important because it's not a cookie cutter solution. Every family, every individual, it's very unique to them. You want to make sure that the disability policy you have, it meets your needs, your family's needs, and gives you protection for what you guys and what you feel is most important. So just a quick overview of disability is it's there to protect your biggest asset, your income. I want to move on to the next slide.
Can I make a point here too?
Go ahead, Steve.
So I mentioned earlier about the group policies and how they don't cover everything. So I think legally you can have up to 70% of your income replaced by a disability policy.
Sure.
So what we're talking about here is obviously you should have all the group benefit you can get. We're discussing putting in place a supplemental policy that's paid for with after-tax dollars, something with what's already in your bank account, so that when you receive that benefit, every single dollar you get is tax-free.
Yeah.
We want to supplement in between that 70% and that now 40 or 30% you're getting from group.
Absolutely. Either supplement it, or in specialized cases, if you're a very specialized occupation, you may want to just forego the group and get all of your income protected with a Guardian product. The next thing is you can't predict the future, but you can prepare. So disability insurance, it gets a bad rap because if people read disability, I've talked about before, just think about one specific thing, but it can cover a various number of things, right? We're talking about stroke, heart attack, cancer, vision, hearing, any kind of mental, nervous impairment that you may get.
Depression.
Factors, right? So you want to make sure that you understand disability insurance, what your contract protects from your group standpoint. If you don't have any group, I really advise you to get with Stephen and figure out what you currently have in place to know what worst day, if you have to call Stephen and say, hey, I got a disability, what can I do? Stephen can give you some good news and hopefully say, hey, look, you're protected. We took care of you. So the next thing is what to look for, the key features of a DI policy, right? Having a strong base policy is important. What that means is the definition of the contract. What does that mean, right? Like, just like, like when you get house insurance, okay, this is the value. If I have ever lost, this is what I'm going to get. This is the kind of pearls, which is a kind of loss incurring event, a hurricane, a flood. In this case, what counts as a disability? And what am I covered for, right? Disability policies underwriting does take in your personal medical history. So there are going to be some factors that Stephen will talk you through when that time comes to make sure that it is a good fit for you and what you're covered for. The next thing is the flexibility and ability to customize. Guardian really offers a broad range of customability because we know everybody has their own unique needs. No two persons are the same. No two people's financials are the same. Their lifestyles, their family needs. It's me and Stephen, right? Two different people, two different needs. So we want to go in and make sure the policy is completely flexible, customizable. My policy, the one that I have, is not the same as the one that Stephen has. I'll tell you that. We looked at that right before this, actually talked about it. But mine's stage 70. I got it at a young age, and Stephen's got a great policy as well. So we're both uniquely positioned from an income standpoint what we need to make sure that our incomes are protected. And last is the care you work with, right? Like if you were sitting in the class and you were on a lab project and you're like, all right, let's build teams. Now you have an option to be with an A+ student. You're like, oh yeah, that guy's smart. Let's get with him. Or that girl is really smart and partner with that person. Or there's somebody that's, sitting in the back of the classroom, throwing paper airplanes, getting D's on projects, right? Would you partner with them, or are you going to partner with the A+ student, right? It's up to you. And that's what financial strength means. Any kind of insurance, whether you buy car insurance, house insurance, disability insurance, is a promise to pay you on your worst day, right? And wouldn't you want to partner with someone that's going to pay you and be there for you to have your back on that worst day than be with someone that might not be there? And financial strength says the ability for them to pay you or pay all the claims that are on their current book from a perspective of insurance. They have a allotment they put away to make sure they can pay all their claims if they happen. That's what financial strength means.
Got it.
So the strong foundation, right? So looking at your base policy, it's important to understand the waiver of premium, waiver elimination period, hospice care, presumptive. These are all things that Guardians comes in, but I want to kind of give you a quick high level of some key terms to look for in a disability policy. The big thing is benefit period, right? So benefit period is the amount of time that you can collect benefit. You can have 5-year benefit period. So if you got disabled with a disability, you could collect it for 5. You could do a 10-year. You could do to age 65, which means if I got disabled with a shoulder injury and I could never work again until 65, they'll pay me all the way till 65. 67 or 70. So that's kind of one factor that you want to make sure that you understand of your disability policy. The next factor you want to understand of your disability policy is the elimination period. The elimination period is the time you have to wait, right? It's almost similar to thinking about it if you're going back to the home insurance or the car insurance policy. It's the deductible. So in the car insurance, it's like, okay, I have to pay a minimum of $500 before I can go ahead and collect and start getting the insurance to cover it. In this, it's not a finite cash value amount. It's a time period. It's the time period you have to wait from a deductible standpoint. It's a deductible of time before you can start collecting benefit. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120, 360, whatever you want, right? There's a lot of flexibility that Garden offers, and it's unique to every individual. If you have a really big cash savings account, maybe you can say, you know what, I can self-insure myself for 120 and do it for 6 months, or I can do it for 360 and do a year. And that lowers your premium. If your cash value is low and you have a rainy day fund, maybe you go 30 days and make sure that 30 days in, you're covered, right? So those are some things you want to think about. And that's why it's very customizable and unique to the individual and their unique financial situation.
Yep.
The strong foundation, these are basically things that are built into Guardian's policy, and we can talk about them more in depth. Today was more high level, but these are some things you want to talk about. Waiver of premium basically says if you're disabled, we will waive your premiums. So you don't have to pay us while you're disabled, but on top of that, we will actually waive them for an additional 6 months after you recover from your disability, which is unheard of because a lot of carriers say the day they come back to work, you got to start paying your premiums again. We want your money. Guardian's like, we understand you just went through a traumatic experience, let you get back on your feet, build up your reserves, and then start paying us again 6 months after.
That's great.
The waiver elimination period. If you are presumptively totally disabled, I use the example of the ventilators during COVID. That's an activity of daily living that you cannot do. If you're presumptively totally disabled and you lose an activity of daily living, Guardian will pay you day one and waive that deductible we talked about. They'll say, okay, your deductible is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, but you are totally disabled right now. And we see that, so we're going to go ahead and waive that period and start paying you now because your family needs that money now, right? That's huge. Guardian also's base policy says hospice care. If you were ever admitted to hospice care, and you're totally disabled, starting right there, and we'll start paying you disability day one to help with any of those incurments or needs that you may need for hospice. Presumptive total disability we talked about. If you're presumptive totally disabled, Guardian covers that. Some carriers don't, some do. So that's important to make sure your contract says that. The serious illness benefit endorsement, that's one of my favorite built-in policies, built-in endorsements that Guardian offers. It's if you have a heart attack, stroke, or cancer, one of the 3 leading causes of death and disability in America, Guardian pays an additional 50% of your base benefit above and beyond that. So if you had 10K of coverage, let's just say hypothetically, Guardian would pay an additional 50% of that. So you get 15K for the first year because they understand heart attack, stroke, and cancer is a very traumatic experience, not only on yourself, but your family. So they don't want you thinking about all the medical bills and the chemo and all that. They say, listen, here's the extra income, go recover, go fight, because Guardian wants you to get back on your feet as soon as possible. So let's take care of you financially so that's not a burden on you during this tough time.
It's unheard of.
Exactly. And then the last one, the occupational rehabilitation and modification. Guardian, they want you to get back to work, right? So any kind of occupational rehabilitation you may need, kind of, PT or whatever, as well as any modifications to your workplace. If you need an elevator installed to go up the stairs, Guardian will help cover some, if not all, cost of those modifications, as long as it's warranted, to make sure that you can get back to work. Because Guardian, at the end of the day, wants you to get back to work. They don't want you sitting around because it's not good for you or good for anybody. So they want you to get back to work. So they'll pay for any kind of modifications needed or any kind of rehabilitation you may need to get back to working at your occupation. Along with that, the big thing is non-cancelable guaranteed renewal. That is something that's very important. Guardian can never cancel your policy, and it's guaranteed renewed every year until you want to stop paying the premiums or until the policy is over with that 65. So that's huge to look for in one of the carriers you work with. The choices and flexibility, so it's really important to get coverage while you're healthy or while you're young. Age doesn't matter, right? It's about how healthy you are, because like we said before, Guardian takes into factor your individual medical situation. And so they will review it all thoroughly, right? And if I had a shoulder injury and my shoulders, I have a bum shoulder, similar to Cam Newton, then they're probably going to say, Neal, you can't cover your shoulder, but 98% of your body is covered. So your shoulder, it's already a weak point that you have. And that's okay, but we will cover everything else. And so that's important to understand that Guardian's going to take in factor your medical situation. So it's very important when you're talking to Stephen to make sure you showcase everything so he can set expectations correctly to say what possible actions there are and how he can protect you, right? Because Stephen's job is to be your advisor, and he can't protect you unless he knows the full picture, right? The next thing is in the event of a disability, if you are able to work in a different occupation, whether it's being an office manager, if you're a business owner and you're a doctor and you had a medical practice and now you can't practice, but you're running the business, you're still getting paid. you are still allowed to collect with Guardian's true own occupation definition. And so while I'm here, I'll go ahead and cover that for you. There's a few different types of definitions of disability that you look for, whether it's group or just a supplemental coverage on top. You want to make sure that you have a true own occupation. What that means is if you can't do your specific occupation, it's very specialized to you, then you are disabled. There's a 2-year true own knock, which says for 2 years, if you can't do your specific occupation, we'll cover that. But after that, if you can do any occupation, you're not covered. And the last is modified ONOC that says if you can do any occupation, then you're not disabled and we're not going to pay you. Guardian is a big believer in the true own occupation. It says if you can't do your specific occupation because you put the time, the sweat, the equity to get to where you are, to be who you are, then it's important to protect that specific job, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to go ahead and say in your contract, okay, disability income specialist, if he can't do his specific job and his duties, well, then he's disabled. Even if Neal goes out and becomes a car salesman, he was not a disability income specialist anymore. So that's a different job. We're going to cover it.
Yeah. So there's a couple questions that I've got that I think can help. I think with the next 5 minutes that we have left, there are a lot of options when it comes to protecting your income, right? So what are some of the custom pieces of this policy that you can add on? And is it the same for everybody?
Yeah, so it's not, right? Some of the custom features are the COLA, right? The cost of living adjustment. Do you want your disability to stay on track with the cost of living? So if you get disabled, right, you get a base benefit of $5K. If you're disabled for more than 1 year, it'll keep growing with you as you're disabled. So 3%, 6%, what you may need. The other options are, we got enhanced partial, right? If you're partially disabled, group coverage doesn't have any kind of partial disability on there usually, right? So if you're partially disabled, and let's just say you can only get to work 20% of the time or 15% of the time, or you lose 15% of your income if you're a salesperson. Well, that's partially disabled, right? You can't go out. I can't go out and talk to people as much because I got a back injury. I can only see 5 people instead of 10. Well, now I'm partially disabled. So those are factors that you could add on. There's also RPP, which is very important. It's called the Retirement Protection Plus. If I'm disabled, right, I'm getting 60% of Stephen showed of my income. What is that 60% going to? Probably my lifestyle, like food, basic necessities of living. I'm not saving for retirement. Now, missing 5 years in the market could substantially change my retirement picture at the end of my retirement time. So it's very important to make sure you have some retirement in place as well. That way, Guardian offers that and says, well, go ahead and put X amount, whatever you're currently contributing, into a trust. You, as well as your employer, whatever you're contributing into a trust for you, you direct how that gets invested. And at 65, we'll give that to you, and you take it over, and it's yours, just like you had retirement everywhere else, right? And so while you're disabled, Guardian will put and match exactly up to 100% of what you, as well as any of your employers or whatever you're contributing into a qualified plan. So that's important to think about. There's quite a few other ones. They're all specialized, but we can talk through that on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
If you have questions, bring them to Stephen, and Stephen and I will connect and go from there.
So basically, no two people have the same exact policy because they're very specific to you. That's a good point. You mentioned, you can go work part-time somewhere else, and with the right definition on your policy, you can still get all the benefit of your policy while you're disabled because you're not doing the exact specifications of your job. For instance, like a surgeon, if they get tremors in their hands and they can't do their job any longer, but they could go teach at a hospital, they could still get all their benefit from their previous job that they were getting, and they can go get their teaching income.
100%. We have a ortho surgeon on claim right now that he went skiing with his family, got a pretty bad accident on skiing, can't do surgery anymore because he got tremors. We got an exact example, but he actually now manages the practice as a business manager of his practice and teaches on the side, collects a sizable income from those two things. But since he cannot be an ortho surgeon anymore, he gets benefit from Guardian as well as the other sources.
Yeah. So for instance, if we've got loan officers on our call today, and you can't actually do the functions of your job as a loan officer, but you could go be a teller, guess what?
Collect both checks.
Yeah. So it's about the job you have when you apply and you get approved for it. Guardian's like, that's our promise. We're going to give you.
And if you change occupation, it's the last job you had in the last 12 years, but we can talk, last 12 months, but yeah.
Okay. Got it. Well, the last thing I want to cover before we end today is I get a lot of pushback from business owners about disability insurance because they think, oh, well, I've got another person in my company who can run the company while I'm gone. I've got a really great business partner who will continue to pay me if I'm sitting at home and I can't work. That is an issue because you're now a liability to that business. You're bringing in $0 to that business. you're now a liability on that business's balance sheet. And at some point, they're going to figure out how to cut bait. Either it's through their buy-sell agreement in a contingency plan, or they're going to give you a very small buyout. Whatever it is, they're going to get you off that balance sheet because they can't be profitable until they do that.
Sure.
So as much as you might love that person, business is business. And
Yeah.
so if you're a business owner, it's very important to consider that.
Yeah, absolutely. So going into that, we have a variety of products for business owners as well. If you have a partnership, we have a disability buy-sell agreement that we can put in force that says, listen, if one of the partners becomes disabled, after a certain amount of time, we'll go ahead and offer the other partners the amount to go ahead and buy that partner out of that business or that practice.
Yeah,
because
disability buyout.
it's a life buyout, life buy and sell. If someone dies, this is a disability that causes a liability. We also have an overhead expense. Business owners, you built this baby, right? It's really close to your heart. You built this, and you'd hate to see it go because you became, because most businesses, when they're still starting out, right, at Guardian, it's too big to fail in a sense. But when you're starting out, you are the business, right? Like you are the name, the brand, and all that to a certain extent. Well, in that case, you want to make sure you have overhead protection as well as your own IDI policy. The IDI will pay you while you're disabled. The overhead expense will help pay for business expenses while you're out. There's even a feature that says we can even get a professional replacement. If you have a specialty, like you're a dentist, they can go ahead and add that rider to the overhead expense policy. They'll go ahead and pay up to a certain salary to go ahead and hire a replacement for you as a dentist while you're on disability. Because if you're a dentist and your practice goes out and you're the only dentist on staff, you need another dentist to make sure people or patients are being seen until you can come back and start doing your job again. So there's a lot of disability products for business owners that I would really encourage, if anybody on this call is a business owner, to talk to Stephen about, because it could be the difference between your business going away from disability or thriving through it and making it to the next steps in your life.
Thank you, man. Well, I'm glad we covered that. I mean, my main job as an advisor is to help my clients build wealth. And
Right.
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that life can change at any moment. And so if we don't plan for those changes, we're SOL. Any questions? If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat box for the last 2 minutes we've got. If anyone is interested in understanding what this may look like for you, it could take 4 to 6 weeks to get answers on those things. So, it typically involves creating an application on our end. We send it over to you. You sign it electronically. And then 4 to 6 weeks of looking at medical records and, if possible, labs, things like that, to give you the health rating. There's 4 different things that determine how much benefit you're eligible for, as well as what the premium looks like for your plan. It's going to be age, gender, occupation, and income.
Yep.
So once we figure out all of those things, we can determine exactly what that might look like for you. And you can anticipate usually to pay anywhere from 1 to 3% of your overall income to protect up to 70% of your income.
Yep, absolutely. And it's really important, like Stephen said. I mean, Stephen's your sword and shield in a sense, right? He's going to go out there and fight for you and attack when he needs to, but also protect you to make sure your assets are protected as well. So he's really a big guy. So whatever we can do to help you and Stephen's clients to make sure that you protect it correctly, we will.
Well, I'm going to put my information in the chat here. It is Stephen.Huskey@cplanning.com. And then my phone number is 843-714-3387. You guys can save that. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. If you have any people in mind who could possibly use something like this or just have questions about it, I am more than happy to assist them and give them as much education on the issue that I can. Yeah, the biggest thing, Stephen, that we've also seen is some grandparents and some parents will buy a disability policy for their younger kids. They're like, I can't want 3% because it's really tough for me. They'll go ahead and buy it just kind of like they do with life insurance and pay the premiums until those kids can get to a place where they can afford it. Because the younger age you get it, the more affordable the premium is. You level it out. There's 2 options. You can do a level or graded premium. Graded changes every year until you lock it in. It's kind of like a rate lock on a mortgage, but then you can also do a level premium. So if they're very young and they can't afford to get the great coverage, sometimes the parents or grandparents are buying the coverage for a 5-10 year period. And once their income gets enough, they say, hey, go ahead and take this over, but I got this for you in case you, God forbid, something happened to you. Absolutely. Well, thank you again for joining us today, Neal. Thanks for co-hosting with me and giving as much information as we can. Y'all have a great rest of your day. This has been recorded, so for anybody who could not attend, I'm going to send this out in an email once it is approved by our compliance department. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks. See ya.